Hey, HopeQuest family, Troy and Melissa here, and we are grateful that you've joined us for another episode of Hope for Today, where we try to give you just a little bit of hope to carry you on for the week, or maybe a lot of hope, depending on how things go.
Right.
I'll be honest, I'm a little bit uncomfortable today because we're normally sitting down, and I am a creature of habit. But here we are standing up. Melissa suggested, why don't we stand up today? You know, because Melissa likes new things. Troy, however, doesn't like new things. So here we are in our lovely home, but standing, not sitting. At least we're on the proper side
Right.
of one another.
I won't push you that far out of your comfort zone.
That would be not good. And that would also perhaps result in what we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Because we're going to talk about all of the irritability and anger and fighting that is going on with this COVID crisis. And the unfortunate reality is I have found myself far more irritable and far more angry than I have been in a long, long time. And for that, sweetheart, let me just say I'm sorry.
Grace for that.
I recognize that. And we want to talk about why it is that Troy and others are far more irritable and far more angry than they might normally be. And my goodness, if you just simply Google, here's an interesting Google search for you. Google coronavirus grocery store fights, and you will see all sorts of interesting videos, two of which happened right here in the great state of Georgia, one at Sam's Club that involved a fight over I'm not sure what, probably toilet paper or water, but ultimately ended up with someone getting smashed over the head with a bottle of wine. And then another more recent one here in Walmart in the greater Atlanta area. And then there's some really good, there's one that's so exciting.
Sweetheart, we digress.
Okay. I'm sorry. If you want to send me an email, I can tell you about the one that was really good.
Yes.
So anyway.
Yes, we don't need
Bottom line is, why on earth, Melissa, is everyone so angry? Why are folks more irritable than normal? Why are people angry? Help us understand why this is.
Well, the long and short answer is people are afraid. People are afraid because this is a real threat. It's a threat to health, it's a threat to life, it's a threat to economy, it's a threat to stability and security. And so the way we're wired, the way God made us is when we get afraid, we either fight or flight, right? Or if we feel really helpless, we just shut down. And so I think, what's happening across the nation with just normal people and in homes as people were kind of social distancing and quarantined together, that we're seeing a lot more irritability, hostility, the fight response to fear, and people really struggling to get along and relate to each other in loving ways.
So what you're telling me is that the fact that I'm feeling more on edge, more anxious, more irritable, more frustrated is really because I'm afraid.
Yes. You're afraid and you feel powerless.
And I don't like feeling powerless.
No.
And when you feel powerless, what do?
I tend to just sit and be. I don't fight.
Okay, you don't fight. So on a good day, you sit and rest in God.
Right, trusting
on a bad
in
day.
God. On a bad day, I distract myself.
Okay, you distract yourself, you kind of escape.
Right. Watch a movie, do something that engages another part of my brain so I don't think about it.
And my reaction tends to be, I get intense. I've got to fix it. I don't like being afraid. I don't like feeling powerless. And by golly, I'm going to fight back before I get hurt.
Right.
And so the reality is, whether you are approaching this kind of underchurned fear and anxiety and on edgeness by escaping and withdrawing and trying to get away, or by being more intense and being more aggressive and angry, the bottom line is there is a path that we can walk on that helps us overcome that. And here's the thing we've got to understand before we even talk about that path. We weren't made to be constantly on edge and constantly afraid like we have been. And with this whole coronavirus thing, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are afraid about finances. What is this going to mean long term for businesses, for ministries? There have been impacts at HopeQuest. I know there have been impacts for you in your life. That creates a lot of anxiety and uncertainty and fear. And this sense of powerlessness. And then we have this wonderful tool called Zoom, and we can get on these Zoom meetings, but now all the time I'm on a Zoom meeting and I'm encouraged to put my camera on and to smile and to, I need to look like I'm paying attention, and I need to worry about what's behind me. Is my background cool? Is my background not cool? Zoom will let me put a cool background on if I don't have a cool background behind me. The bottom line is there's this pressure that we feel during these times that kind of ups that fear, that ups that anxiety, that ups that fact that we're on edge. And there's no outlet for that.
Right.
And so we want to talk today about a simple path that you can walk on that helps you, some steps that you can take that help you so that you're not so angry, so that you're not so irritable, or that you're not so escaping, but you can come together in your important relationships. Because as couples, Melissa and I have fought more in the last 4 weeks than we have in a long time. At work, I've had more conflict and just tenseness than in a long, long time. And again, it's because of this fear and anxiety. So Melissa, what can we do what is the solution to this fear and anxiety, and how can we kind of navigate this in a way that helps, doesn't hurt?
Well, I think just like anything, when we don't know what's happening inside, it increases our anxiety.
Right.
So just having a diagnosis, okay, I'm anxious, I'm afraid, life is out of control, and I don't like that feeling.
And it's normal to feel anxious
Absolutely.
and afraid during a time like this.
Absolutely.
It's not, it doesn't mean you're uniquely screwed up or you're weird.
Right.
A lot of folks are feeling powerless,
Absolutely.
overwhelmed, and afraid
That's
right
right.
now.
And it's not unspiritual to feel overwhelmed either. And it's not sinful to feel anxious when the whole world has changed. So, I think understanding it for what it is, telling yourself the truth about
Right.
that, letting yourself take a deep breath and say those positive things.
Right.
Like, it makes sense why I feel this way.
Right.
God is not displeased with me for feeling this way. He gets it. It's okay to feel anxious. All of these things, just let us take a deep breath, not judge ourselves, have some self-compassion, and just kind of understand what is happening.
Yeah, I love that. And then right behind that is we can not only have self-compassion and kind of cut ourselves some slack, but we can have grace for one another.
Absolutely.
And understand, one of the things that frustrates me about you, Melissa, is that sometimes you won't join me in being frustrated and afraid. And
Right.
that really is frustrating.
You mean when I won't get anxious?
Yes.
Because what happens when I don't get anxious with you?
It makes me feel alone in my anxiety.
Ah.
And see, if you would be anxious with me, then everything would be better.
Right, because we would both be swirling in the vortex. But you wouldn't feel alone.
That's right. I wouldn't feel alone. The reality is we should cut one another some slack. Have grace for one another. It's okay that Melissa's actually calm, and it's okay that she's trusting God. And Melissa can cut me a little slack and say, I understand why you'd feel afraid.
Right.
But if we'll just kind of give one another grace, cut one another slack, that really, really helps a lot. Now, the next thing, Melissa, is super important because this is where we actually talk about our fears, talk about what's
Right.
going on inside. So tell us what your thoughts are about that.
So, a lot of us, especially in marriages, have this dance that can get up and running when we're not being honest about what's happening inside of us. Normally, that looks like someone in the relationship tends to lean in and try to pursue and make things better. And someone in the relationship tends to withdraw, be self-reliant, and not talk about feelings, okay? And so Troy and I, usually the pursuer are women. Women are more relational. They go after relationships, tell me what's wrong, connect with me. Troy and I are different, not shockingly. He's the girl, I'm the dude in this relationship. But I tend to withdraw and go into myself when I'm distressed. And you tend to pursue and try to get things done and make things right when you're distressed. And so if we don't know that about ourselves, or if we have unresolved conflict about that, we'll just get into our old dance, and we're going to have way more intensity, way more disconnect in our relationship, because you're going to feel alone because I'm not joining you. Like you just said that so beautifully.
Right.
And I'm going to feel the more you pursue, the more I'm going to want to distance because you're creating all this anxiety in for me. and I just don't want any part of it. Like, I want to just feel peaceful, leave me alone. Which, of course, just sends all kinds of negative messages in the relationship.
And the solution to that is to talk about what's going on internally. For me to ask Melissa, I see you over there so calm. Is it that you really don't care? Or is it that you think? See, sometimes Melissa, I think, believes that in our backyard is this giant tree. If we could pan over there to our backyard, there'd be this giant tree. And that giant tree would be full of money, all the money in the world that we could possibly need. And so she never gets anxious about finances because in her mind, she's just going to go out there in the backyard and pick money off the money tree.
So not true.
I, however, know that there is no money tree in our backyard. So I get anxious over finances. And this creates a lot of conflict. But if we would stop, and I would ask Melissa, sweetheart, why are you so calm in the midst of this financial crisis that the coronavirus crisis is creating? I could hear her heart. And it's not that she doesn't care. It's not that she's being flippant. It's not that she believes there's a tree in the backyard full of money. It's that she has a deep trust in God. And she believes that God will give us everything that we need and that we can depend upon and trust Him. Likewise, I can say to her, you know what? I feel afraid because I know there's not a tree back there. And I struggle to trust God in sometimes these difficult situations because in the past I feel like I've been left alone and I've been abandoned and bad things have happened and I've gotten hurt. So if we'll just talk about our real fears, the underlying fears, instead of the symptoms, instead of everything else, this will help us actually connect. And as we connect together, we'll be able to diffuse the tension and actually come together in a positive, helpful way.
Right. A really important part of this is knowing each other so that, I know that Troy is a trauma survivor. I know that there were many times in his childhood that he was left alone to deal with overwhelming circumstances and didn't feel like he had any power to change those. And so, when he's more irritable or tense, I get it. This is a crazy world we're living in. There's so many things outside of our control and outside of our power. And so it's easier for me to give him grace if he's edgy or sharp. I don't take it personally. I understand this is a lot about what's happening inside of him because I know him. I know this man. I love him. He's the guy I love more than anyone else in the world. And I trust that he's still loving me, that something else is going on inside of him that's creating the angst and distress that I see. And so knowing that, I'm able to validate it. I understand why you're so fearful right now. It makes sense to me. What can I do to help?
And I'm able to validate her. I'm not validating her fears. What I'm validating is her faith. And I'm saying, sweetheart, I know that you're not minimizing my fears, but that you are maximizing your trust in God. And that helps me. That encourages me. So if we open up our real hearts and our real fears and we validate those, wow, there's a path, not just to survive this without a fight, but to actually connect in the midst of a difficult situation. So the next thing that's important, and you might say this sounds perfunctory and it can feel perfunctory, but praying together really does make a difference. And I'll be honest, this is hard for us, and maybe we'll do a whole Hope for Today on praying together. But the reality is there is power in coming together and talking to God together, laying your hearts together before the Lord. And so anything you'd want to say about praying together?
So what I would just say about that is a lot of people talk about praying together. Oh, I prayed in my quiet time. But very, very few couples and very few families actually really pray together. We know it's something we should do, but a lot of things get in the way. Fears of intimacy. It's very intimate to pray together. Yeah. Fears of feeling vulnerable. Sometimes our own unfinished business with God gets in the way of praying together. Yeah. But it actually doing the prayer, actually just being honest with God, with each other, invites a whole nother resource into the room for our souls. A resource of calm and a resource of we're not alone in this. Someone bigger than us is on board. He's on our team.
So pray together. We're going to pray together as soon as we're done with this video lesson. And we're going to pray for you, and you can pray for us. Last thing, and this is super important, because during this coronavirus pandemic, we are sitting in front of the computer far more than we normally would. We are looking at the Zoom camera far more than we probably ever would. And there are proven realities that moving moving your body, physical activity and exercise helps you avoid depression and helps you make good choices and helps you in so many other ways. I'm working on the coronavirus 20 and I'm not really feeling real good. And part of that is because the gym's closed and I'm not moving. So let me just encourage you, get up and walk around some today. Get up and go for a walk. I was talking to Rachel recently and she was just talking about how, normally she's walking around school in her teaching, and now she sits at her desk all day because she's teaching via the computer. And we were just talking about the importance of just getting out and getting some fresh air and walking. And so move, find a way to move, find a way to exercise, find a way to get those blood juices, stuff flowing. And Melissa, what else would you say before we close this out?
Yeah, I just would echo that. When we are in fight or flight, the adrenaline shot we get to our body is meant to make us move, to run or to fight. And so if we let all that adrenaline just kind of sit, we're going to get more anxious and it'll go downhill from there. So I wholeheartedly agree.
I'm going to put the notes to this little chat down below in the comment section, or actually in the information section. If you could also even more importantly, share this video with someone. I know there are a lot of folks out there struggling with conflict and asking themselves, why is everyone so angry? We want to encourage you to take these simple steps so that you can not only not be angry, but more importantly, you can connect to those that you really want to be connected with. We love you guys. We appreciate you. We're grateful for your prayers, and we will see you next week.